Pencil Kings, 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 Pencil Kings.
If you focus on the love for drawing and what you do, then, the doors will open.
Welcome once again. This is the Pencil Kings podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Bowler. And if you haven't heard of us, if this is your first time listening to us, you should go over and check us out at pencilkings.com. What we do is we work with artists to bring professional instructors and show you their process, and then put you in a community with other aspiring artists so that you can move forward with your career. In a nutshell, that's what we do. Today, we're talking to Mike Clarida, and Mike and I were just talking a little bit before we started recording, and Mike's got an awesome story, and I don't know where it goes. I don't know what the end of the story is, so I'm going to be just like you. We're going to follow this rabbit hole and see where it leads, but I know that there's a lot of people out there. I gave a talk recently at a college, and the idea that somebody wanted to be an Imagineer came up, and I didn't know what an Imagineer was. Mike will explain. But just to set this story up, Mike graduated in 2000, right, Mike?
Yeah, 2000.
2000. Okay. So he graduated from one of the best schools in the country, in the U.S. And before we dive into that, Mike, why don't you give people just a 1-minute overview of where you're at right now, and then we'll go back to the beginning, back to 2000 or 99 or wherever you started.
Okay, currently I am a freelance illustrator, independent contractor. I just wrapped up almost 2 years with the Walt Disney Company. They have divisions in Walt Disney, and I worked for Consumer Products, which is Disney Design. I worked on toys, character design, character illustration, and just basically anything that would throw at me. And, previous to that, we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's kind of where I am now. And I say wrapped up because as of 2 days ago, Disney, it's kind of funny I'm going to say this, they said that they didn't have any more money for freelance contractors. So I am once again on the open plate, so to say. So there you go.
Oh, well, this is perfect timing. So if somebody hears this and they wanted to hire, or you're open for new work, right?
Absolutely, always.
Awesome. Okay, so let's take it back. So let's set the stage. Did you go to school, to college right out of high school, or did you wait for a little bit?
No, actually, I graduated, in the early 90s, and I had a full ride scholarship to a community college, Daytona State College, for voice, for singing, and, doing a lot of theater productions and a lot of opera. And, I had a full ride there, so I got my associate's degree, and then I actually had a scholarship as well to Stetson University. And then I decided, why don't I try this art thing out? Because I had done art in high school, and I really loved it. However, whenever you have free money coming your way, it's really hard to turn it down. And, that's whenever I met a design teacher by the name of Nani Venkin. She, unbeknownst to me, had deals with Discovery Channel and the Home Channel to have her own show. And she really inspired me to apply to Ringling. So that's what I did in 1997. And that's whenever I started there.
And what was the reputation of Ringling like in 1997? I worked with a few Ringling grads. I thought they were fantastic. What it costs to go to the school is a whole different subject, which we won't get into. We've talked about that before. But just the quality of the people that I worked with, I was really impressed, and I thought they were very capable and actually amazing artists.
The reputation in 97, whenever I went, was basically the go-to place if you wanted to work for Disney. If you wanted because a lot of the other schools don't have the reputation for the recruiters coming to them. You have to basically kind of lay your own land and find your own path. However, Ringling has instances and weeks that are dedicated to different companies that would come. We would have Lucasfilm come, and they would do their presentation, and then a portfolio review right on campus. And the same thing was true for many of the other companies. From Gannett Corporation would come, which is a newspaper corporation with tons of newspaper and editorial, to Scholastic, to Lucasfilm, LucasArts, Lucas Games, Disney, just a myriad from Disney Feature Animation. And their computer animation department is one of the top in the country. and it was back then as well. They were real innovators, and a lot of the Ringling students went on to go work for Pixar and earn Academy Awards. So they're kind of the central point for computer animation. That's what they're really known for. But they're illustrators. One of the great illustrators and directors in Disney, Aaron Blaise, graduated, I think, maybe 94 or so, and he went on to work on Lion King and a lot of those other places or other movies. So it's got a real tradition.
Very cool. And Ringling is in Florida, correct?
It is in Sarasota, Florida, which is on the West Coast, just south of Tampa, about 35 minutes.
Okay. All right. So you go to school, and I'm assuming that you do well. You did well in school, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I averaged, in terms of grading, because art is so subjective, I average grades from B's to A's. But the real proof in the pudding comes whenever the recruiters come and they review the portfolios. And I was one that, consistently got interviewed, week to week whenever I would submit. No matter pretty much wherever I submitted my, whatever company came, I typically had an interview, and maybe 200 people would submit because the school only has about 800 people total, in all 4 years of, students. And whenever I would submit my stuff, I'd be amongst maybe 25 or 30 people that would get interviews. So that was really uplifting at the time. So I did well. I mean, I enjoyed it.
All right. And just to explore a little bit, while you were there, so you're surrounded with a lot of amazing other students. What do you think you did a little bit differently that allowed you to consistently get interviews? Were you just I like this term, arting. Were you arting all the time? Or was there something else that maybe you had, you'd grown up drawing since you were a kid, where I find that there's a lot of people who, they just decide they want to become an artist later. What do you think it was for you that was a little bit special that helped you get those interviews that somebody listening could maybe have some takeaways?
I always am a firm and have been a firm believer since the beginning of my art career to really believe in the basics. The basics and the elements of design, from form to gesture, color theory, and all those things combined together to create a portfolio that that displayed good composition, good understanding of color, good characterization, character design, weight. Whenever I showed my gesture drawings, because that was really important back in the days, you had to show a good understanding of the human form. So I was really good at gesture drawing, and just an overview. And not concentrating on one particular genre. I kind of sampled, and it still continues today. I would sample different styles, so I would have a myriad of styles in my portfolio. And also, what was really important whenever I would go to do the portfolio submission, I would cater my portfolio to the client. So if I went for animation, I would show a lot of movement drawings, a lot of animals and figures and that respect, and layout, and kind of understanding how they work. And then if it was for toys, then maybe I would show turnarounds and just cater the portfolio to the client. And that's still true even today.
Okay, awesome. Those are great takeaways. So back to your story. You're getting these interviews. You're one of 25 or so people who are getting the interviews. So you're in this elite group. What's happening then?
Once you get the interview, then it's just it was a waiting game. And at the time, I'd gotten married and I had just had a baby. So my wife and I were really enthusiastic, and I was getting a lot of other things. At the time, the internet was still in its infancy, and social media wasn't around, and all the traditional forms of submitting yourself to a company, your resume, your hardline portfolio. So I had to design a portfolio to submit to these companies. And after I basically graduated, like right after I graduated, I had opportunities with a couple game companies, early game companies, educational stuff up in the northeast, doing stuff, and Cartoon Network, and it was always, we're in a hiring freeze. And then that was the difference right there. And once I graduated, the cold hard stamp of reality came, and realizing that even though I had great prestige and honor and success at school, after I graduated, I was one of I don't know how many people who had graduated that year. And at the end of the day, it's not where I went to school, it was what I could do for them. And that early in my career, I was good and I could do a lot of things. However, I didn't have experience. I didn't really know what I quote unquote wanted to do. I wanted to be an animator, but there's more than just making that statement. And reflecting on it now, there's a lot of things obviously I would have done different, but I think that, generally speaking, it was just a cold hard reality that I just paid this much for education. And I'm not saying it didn't get me anywhere, but it wasn't. I didn't have enough of my portfolio to be hired at the time. So that was interesting.
Okay, so let's just explore this a little bit because the school that I went to, exact same thing. We didn't have any of the prestige. We didn't have the recruiters. We had nothing, none of the advantages that your school had, but we were there. And I feel like our school had about a 2% success rate in placement. Now, it was a fine art school, so to be fair, they were more about expressing yourself and talking about your artwork, and it wasn't like a direct pipeline into working in games or film or entertainment or something like that.
Right.
But I still felt for all the my classmates who, even though some of them were really good and they were good at employable things like design, working Illustrator or making web designs or whatever, that even they struggled. So a lot of people had to go to college after they went to university. So they get their, 3 or 4 year university degree. Uh-oh, can't get a job. Nobody wants to hire an artist.
Yeah.
Oops. Then they go to a college where they learn the more, I guess, technical skills that people actually do want. And so this is really eye-opening for me. And I was able to get a job because I was always working in this stuff. Like I was doing animation and I had an animation portfolio and I knew how to program in Flash and a bunch of other things, but it was not the school that was teaching this.
No.
It was sort of just being I think it was the fact that I was on the cutting edge of this stuff, and it was so new that there were people who needed it, and your skill level didn't actually have to be that amazing for where I lived
Yeah,
to get a job.
Exactly. Such a need for it at that early stage, and the market wasn't saturated for it. And people were like, well, if you can do a little bit, then that's fine. We'll get you in, and then you can kind of learn on the fly.
So, with that in mind, going back, what do you think you would have done differently, or how would your portfolio be different? Like, you wanted to be in animation, so did you have any actual animation in your portfolio, or was it more of just drawings?
I was one of I think 2 people that were allowed to cross train because at the time the computer animation department had a 2D element in it, so they trained you to do 2D animation. However, in the realm back then of separation of departments, the illustration department was not allowed to fraternize with 3D department. However, I had already done advanced placement classes whenever I was in state college, and that actually freed up some credits, and I applied to do 2D animation. So I was only one of 2 people in my senior year that did 2D animation at Ringling as an illustration student. So that was really cool. So I actually had probably about 5 minutes worth of 2D animation in my portfolio.
Wow.
And that was really cool. I did storyboards, I did animatics, I did 2D animation, and that opened the door. I think, whereas other students that might have had really strong drawing, as an illustration student, I also had that animation perspective and aspect. So I think maybe I would have focused more on animation, and the internet being what it is today, you can learn, you can learn so much from other people, but it wasn't like that. I mean, YouTube hadn't been invented. And, I just kind of went off the fly and just basically, said, this is exactly what I said. I want to animate, therefore I'm going to animate. Nobody's going to tell me different. I'm going to do it. I'm going to read the books. I'm going to understand how it, and tap the people that know how to do it. Because at the time, some of the people at Ringling, some of the teachers, one of them was a recruiter for Disney, and then she retired, and then, now she teaches 2D animation. And so it really, tapping these people was great and taught me a lot. I think I would have focused more on 2D animation and character design and layout and stuff like that. My senior thesis was basically a game design that I did the entire spread. I did layout, background, character design. I did running cycles for the characters. I did all this stuff back in 2000. And I could have done better, but, hindsight's 2020.
So I guess where do you feel like you fell down then? Because to me, it sounds like you did have the right portfolio for getting into animation.
At the end of the day, Mitch, what it comes down to is at the time, and this is what I'm learning now, and we'll get into this a little bit later, you might have all of the tools in your tool belt to accomplish the task for the client. However, if their hands are tied, similar to what happened at Disney recently, even though I had done incredible work for them, whenever a situation in a larger company dictates to the smaller, division that you have to do X, Y, Z, then, they're going to cut talent people out. I mean, look what happened to the animation studio in Florida. It got completely shut down, and all those people, went off on their merry way or got absorbed into other departments. But I mean, I know some guys that, I've worked with for years and years, and even at Disney recently, they had been with Disney for 10, 11 years, and they just got hatcheted. So it's money. It has to do with money. And maybe at the time that whenever I had all these, possibilities and a young student and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, that the money was just not there. So, if I didn't do follow-up, maybe I could have done more follow-up and sent more stuff and developed stuff on my own. And I don't know. Who knows?
Actually, that's something that we've touched on at least once or twice on the podcast is the element of timing. So, like, if the budget's not there, like this is sort of like the same thing that sometimes the money's there, or there's a new project starting up, or there's somebody new initiative. Then they're like, "Hey, we're opening this new department," and timing can really be, you could be the best person in the world, but if the timing's wrong and you're in the wrong location, well, there's not much you can do. So I think the timing thing is actually important for if somebody's starting out and, they apply and they don't get the thing that they think they should, and they feel like they put in all the work. And it really could just be that if you apply again in 2 months, or if you start talking to whoever the HR person or whoever's in charge of the production and start a relationship there, then you're just like, okay, well, was it a portfolio thing, or was it more of a timing thing? And if they say, well, it was totally a timing thing, your portfolio is great. It's like, okay, well, when do you think there'd be something else starting up? And they, maybe if they know, that's great, but they probably don't know. Like, well, I don't know. And so then you can just say, well, I'll follow up with you in 2 months and show you some of my new work. And then you just keep your head down and keep applying to other companies.
Yes, but exactly.
That's really the path.
That's
awesome.
Like exactly what just happened with Disney. Again, I referenced that. Even though all the people love what I did, and production manager and the art director, everybody, the plain fact of the matter is their hands are tied. So what I have done is basically, we'll get into this, of course, again later, is I do a drawing a day. Okay, I do a drawing a day, no matter what. If I have 30 minutes, I have 40 minutes, I have an hour. I try to do something every day. So basically, I post it on a blog or social media, and then I send it to all my Disney contacts as inspiration, for your day. And it kind of, whether it's funny, whether it's technical, whether it's a Disney, Disney video, but that has to do with basically marketing yourself as a resource and a creative resource, and keeping you in front of them for the duration or however long it takes. And that's important too, because even if they say, oh, we don't have any money now, you say, okay, no problem. And then in the back of your mind, you need to have a little thing that clicks on that says, okay, I really want to work for this company. I'm going to continually send them creative stuff and, something about me, something new to show that I'm, working on stuff on my own. That way they remember me when the job does come.
Totally. And it shows this tenacity. It's like,
yes,
you could as the hiring person, it's like you could take a chance on somebody new, or you could hire the guy that just
won't give up,
keeps harassing, and I guess harassing is maybe the wrong word, but just won't give up. And that person wants to be there.
Yes.
There's no doubt. And that's really important. I think when you're starting out, you don't realize that there's a lot of people at different companies, and they're just there to fill in a job.
Exactly.
And then there's the people that absolutely love being there. These are like the shining stars in any company, and every company I've been at has these people, and it also has the people who are there just collecting the paycheck. They might be great artists, and there's nothing wrong with that, but when you're persistent, it really shows that you're that person that you've already kind of got your foot halfway in the door when you're persistent.
Yes, and two, as this will go out and touch many people, I'm sure. What I've discovered is attitude equals altitude. So if you have a good attitude and a positivity about you, and you're continually doing positive work and showing that, again, you have that tenacity, and you're ready to do pretty much anything, then people are going to recognize that. It is something to be a creative, but it's also something to be a creative that has a love for what you do, and it's not just love for what you do for somebody else. It is a love for what you do as an artist. And that's what I'm rediscovering as I've been in the business now for, since 2000, 16 plus years. And, I've worked for, golly, after I graduated, I worked for a company by the name of Venator Group, which owns, or they used to own, Foot Locker, all the Foot Lockers around the world, and also all of the Champs Sports. And they had licenses for apparel with Adidas and Nike. So I worked for them for about 2 years doing, illustration and graphic art for these huge brand names. And, I took, right after college, I took a movie theater job that, I worked on for about 6 months. And then I got hired as a illustrator. And again, I got that job by not giving up. I interviewed and the guy was impressed, but I didn't have everything that he needed. And I just didn't give up. I mean, I left samples, I would call, and just not giving up. And he hired me. And that was a really good job. It taught me a lot. I was in my first art department of 7 people. And, we would have meetings with Nike, designing shoes, designing shirts, designing hard or soft lines. And that was kind of my, preliminary exposure to the apparel world, which ultimately from 2002 all the way until 2014 would be my career. And that's what I basically did, because after I left the Foot Locker / Venator Group, I went to work for a company called Entertainment Outfitters in Florida, and they basically were the in-between I say the in-between. They did licensed apparel for Hard Rock Cafe, for Disney, Planet Hollywood, Universal Studios, Warner Brothers. I mean, you name it. They basically had an in-house design company or design department, and we would do illustration for all this apparel and soft lines and hard goods, and basically kind of like an independent consumer products agency. And I did that for over 10 years. So that's where I got all my ability to think on my feet and develop products from basically nothing. Because I became a concept artist because I had to come up with all, from package design to, we had to do websites, I had to do logos, I had to do character art, I had to do soft line plush art, I had to do pen art, I had to do, this entire consumer products world that I knew nothing about. That's basically where I, basically learned how to do all that stuff. And that ultimately got me the job at Disney.
Awesome. So you've been doing this now for 16 years, and one of the things that I see is that people have, just like you did in 2000, they want to work at Disney or ILM or whatever, and things just don't work out, or the timing's wrong, or they're in the wrong place. And there really is so much opportunity for creatives. Like, people need stuff done all the time. And we live in a time of outsourcing, but this isn't the easiest stuff to outsource, because when you have a product that's for the North American market, there's a North American taste, and you want someone that's familiar with the North American culture to be developing this.
Yes.
I worked a long time in China, and there's all kinds of things like websites. I do a lot of websites, and I would never want to design a Chinese website because I would be so frustrated because they're so different. And just like somebody designing a Chinese website, if they tried to design one for the North American market, it just wouldn't come out right. And the same thing goes for character design and so many things. Yes, it can happen, but it's not easy. So my thing is that we live in this time of so much opportunity for creatives. However, those opportunities aren't beating down your door. Yeah. There's tons of them, but how do you find these things? How do you know about, getting this job working for Foot Locker? Because this is something that, I would say it's just as prestigious as working at Disney, because these are clothes that people are wearing, designing the shoes that people are wearing. It's like, yeah, hey, those shoes? I made those shoes. And someone's like, what? No, you didn't. It's like, yeah, I did. Look at this sketch I have on my phone. That's the shoe. These are the kind of things that exist. And I feel like people just get honed in on, well, there's only this one or two opportunities for me, but it's like, no, there's thousands of opportunities, and sometimes you have to make them yourself. So what does that look like now from your standpoint of, like, how do you take those blinders off and realize that you live in this world of opportunity.
Here's the deal. What I do now, as opposed to what I used to do, I used to not have, how do I put this? I focused so long, oh my gosh, I focused for so long about money. Okay, money, 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 money. Got to have the money. Got to get paid. Got to do this. And what I failed to recognize was I let a lot of my, and this is through time, and this will show some of the younger people as a progression. I'm not old by any far stretch of the imagination. I'm 41, well, 42 years old. So looking at what I've done as opposed to where I'm going now, I basically have that zeal for finding the jobs, so to say. But I'm really focused on the art. There's an artist by the name of Steven Silver, and Steven has been in the industry for a long time. He was character designer for Sony, for Warner Brothers, also for Disney. He designed Kim Possible, and he's got his own school, online school now, and he's an incredible artist, but he started out as a caricaturist. And what he basically says is now the way the market is you have to start little fires, okay? You find where the fire is, being a job, and you tender that fire as long as it'll stay lit. However, the problem is most people put all their logs on one fire. And I noticed this whenever I got suspended from freelance work at Disney, is some of the other freelance artists were so angry. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, how sad. You shouldn't have put all your logs on one fire. And now, I'm looking at the entire spectrum and so much opportunity, exactly as you say. It's not that I don't do incredible work, because I do. It's getting the work in front of the right people and timing. And there's so many other factors than you just doing good work. Now, if you do good work, will you get hired? If you put the artwork in front of the right people, absolutely. Or you have the right contacts. There's so many resources out there now from social media. LinkedIn is one of the best resources. If you're not on LinkedIn, oh my gosh, you are missing out. That's how I got contacted from Disney. Cold contact, they contacted me and said, Mike, come freelance for us. Absolutely. If you're not on the LinkedIn social job site, it's kind of like Facebook for professionals, then you need to do it. I just think that the overall view from my vantage point is there's so much opportunity now. I just need to get my work in front of the right people, and that's what it is. Because honestly, Mitch, I have applied for a lot of positions, and even though I have great stuff, if it doesn't fit that slot, then you're not going to get the gig. It's very interesting now. I mean, I just missed out on a gig this week because I didn't have, it was for attraction design. And I didn't have a lot of environments, doing attraction specific. So like a ride queue, showing people walking around, drinking soda, having a good time in front of the ride queue. And that's just a perspective drawing. And I can do that stuff in my sleep. However, I have been a character guy for, how many years in apparel and product design that I don't really have a lot of background stuff. So whenever the client's client, because that happens sometimes, looked at my site, they're like, we love his work, but we don't see any background or environment stuff for rides. So I'm like, criminy. Now I've got to go and I've got to add that to my tool belt, So a lot of times it's a key. You got to find the right key for the right door. And once it opens, it's incredible, So that's, from my perspective, it's just finding that right key, whether it's social media. And that's why you kind of have to keep doing your own thing as well. Throughout the years, I've done freelance, but I've always done it for somebody else. And whenever I was at Disney, I would always talk to the people and I would say, so are you doing anything at home? And they'd be like, no, I don't do anything at home. I'm so busy. I'm so tired. And I thought, my gosh, where has your zeal gone? And I would say that to my inner self, because even though I would be working literally I'd work for Disney for 7-8 hours a day as a freelance contractor and, in-house. And then I would come home and I would have that zeal for my own stuff and developing my own stuff. And let me tell you something, some of the projects I did at Disney they were life-changing. I designed toys for Star Wars, pins for Star Wars, the new Star Wars movie, even some of I can't really talk about it, but some of the stuff coming out soon. There we go. I designed, for Universal Studios. I did, whenever the Harry Potter experience came out, I did probably 85% of the apparel designs for their shops, there in Universal Studios. So in terms of accomplishment, I feel good, but sometimes, when you don't see that converted to dollars and cents, you think that maybe you're a failure. I don't know. That's kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but it all depends on how you kind of view what you're doing. And the love for drawing should always be center. If you focus on the love for drawing and what you do, then, the doors will open and prepare for the down days, which is what I've done. I prepared for the down days. So that's good.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of judging your success by how big your bank account is or how much money you make. It's probably more how much money you make, because it seems that the more money you make, the more you spend. So we're not actually putting any money in our bank accounts. But
no, and at the end of the day, what is stuff anyway? That's what I kind of had to get down to. It's like, do I need a new car? No. Do I need a new house? No. I have a great family that loves me, and I experience art at my pace, and I love what I do. I mean, I sit here and I draw characters all day. Who can't love that?
yeah,
I designed stinking Star Wars toy. You can't not love that. That is incredible. And whenever I was doing stuff for Universal, and I got to see behind the scenes stuff, and even recently with Disney, and I sat there and I thought, my goodness, what an experience this is. And then they've got different places over there at Disney and different rooms that you go in that they had all the animation maquettes that they brought over from animation after it closed. I mean, I saw stuff from Hercules, from the original sculpted maquettes from Hercules. I'm working 3 feet from it, and that is an inspiration to me, because I this is what happened, after I'd been at the apparel place EOI for 10 years. I had lost myself kind of in the whole apparel industry, and I thought, even though it's a great career, I'm making X amount of dollars per year, where is my passion for drawing? And that's whenever I started doing a drawing a day. And I can sit here and say it was all me, but there was divine intervention. To be honest with you, it was just like, if you want to progress further in your life and really do what you love, do a drawing a day. And that's what I did. I started doing drawing a day. I'd spend 5 minutes on it. Okay, post to Instagram. And a year and a half or a year later, I was getting contacted by Disney because they liked what I did and was posting on LinkedIn. So that tells you something right there. Whenever you love what you do and everything else falls by the side, people will notice what you're doing if you take the right path, posting on the social media and really fostering that creativity. And even now, I still try to post every day, and I have a video channel on YouTube that I, videotape my drawings and stuff. And do I have a huge following now? About 175 people. But it's not about that. It's about the passion for drawing. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I've had great success. I've had terrible success, but it's also getting your stuff in front of the people that need to see, your passion, and your passion will shine through your drawings. And for the young person that's got, twinkly eyes and stuff, I think that's a great attitude to have. But what I didn't understand, and you probably feel the same way, is the amount of work it takes to get something done that not only you're proud of, but also the learning process and the curve. And the times have changed so much, Mitch, from 90s to even the mid 2000s. Now, what you're required to know in terms of being an artist, you need to know 3D, you need to know web, you need to know illustration, you need to know Photoshop and Illustrator, you need to know ZBrush, you need to know product design, you need to know logo. I mean, literally, I have tried to encompass all these things into myself. And, I should be making 500 grand a year, to be honest with you, with all the,
it just never stops.
Blows my mind. It's, now if you don't know all those things, it's funny. I go down through the job listings, and it's like, you need all this stuff. And I thought to myself, you're only going to pay 85 grand for somebody like that? That's ridiculous. That person should be, compensated umpteenth
That's actually a really good point because I tend to advise people to try and specialize and follow where their passion is. So if they love doing characters, go for it. It might not be the easiest job path because they're, particular with characters, but yeah, these companies where you have to do so many different things, I think you really have to consider like how realistic that is to know all these softwares and to also realize that it's not getting better.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting,
It's getting worse. I'm going to tell you something. Whenever I first started out at Disney, the production manager, this is exactly what she asked me. She went down a list and she asked me what I could do. She said, "Can you do characters?" Yes. That meant the Disney characters. That mean now you have to understand, doing Disney characters for Disney. That is on a different level. Let me tell you something. You draw Mickey Mouse for the Disney company, it better darn well look like Mickey Mouse. You got to have all the proportions right. You got to have, and if you're doing the Fab Five for toys, you got to have all that in your wheelhouse already. Number two, do you do package design? Absolutely. Do you do 3D concept work? Absolutely. Can you do concept work, which is basically coming up with an idea from nothing? They're not asking you, do you do Photoshop? That is an already, you are expecting. Do you know Illustrator? You need to not only know Illustrator, you need to know everything about Illustrator up and down. You need to know it so well that you could basically teach it. It was wild to listen to and then whenever I showed her my portfolio, oh yeah, you can do that. Okay, you can do that. Okay, you can do that. And it was basically her checklist. She was looking at stuff, checking stuff off. And then what that did is it opened the door for all of the other jobs. Oh, Mike, can you do a concept of a hardline collectible tea set? And you need to show turnarounds with characters, and you need to basically have all the knowledge pertaining to hardline product creation so you can send to China before I give you the job. So it's that knowledge that has value. All that knowledge needs to be in you, and it cannot be a hindrance. Whenever somebody hands you a job, they are expecting you have all the tools to accomplish the job. No questions asked. So in the professional realm, if like I said, if somebody asks you to do it and there's any question whether or not you can or cannot do it, then you need to evaluate that. So it was an interesting experience with Disney because I did some stuff that I had never done before. I had drawn Mickey Mouse a little bit here and there, but the first job I got, Mitch, was redesigning. Now this is completely out of the wheelhouse. Redesigning Mickey Mouse, combining two genres of Mickey Mouse, and coming up with about 15 different poses for a style guide. That is something completely out of my wheelhouse. Being I had drawn Mickey Mouse, but not for Disney. You know what I'm saying? And so I had to basically merge two styles from old style Mickey to new style Mickey. So that is something Disney hadn't done. So I was doing something that Disney hadn't done, and I had great success, and that opened the door for a bunch of other character work, and that was really cool. I mean, I did toys for them. That was really neat, and it was an experience. And I always look at art as kind of being, and I tell people the same thing, because whenever they ask me, Mike, can you do this? Mike, can you do that? I'm always like, yes, because I'm an artist. I am a creator. I can do anything that you ask me to do, and if I don't know how to do it at that particular moment, I'm going to force myself to learn it at an accelerated rate, and then I will add that to my tool belt.
I think that's actually that's great advice, and I think that's a great place to end this before we go too much further, because just that idea of always being willing to learn.
Yes.
You might not know it today, so I mean, we just listed off a huge list of things that you would have to know, but keep in mind where Mike is in his career. He didn't start last year. So this is something that he's accumulated this knowledge over years and years of continually being fascinated and curious about how different things, how different software packages work, and also demands for the job where somebody said, hey, we need to do these logos in Illustrator. We were doing them in Photoshop before, but that's not going to cut it anymore. And if you don't know that, you're like, oh, all right, I haven't done that. I know that you did in school, but if you haven't done that, then you just pick it up and you get some books, or you hop on you join a site like Pencil Kings, or you join some other site, you go to YouTube, whatever it is, but you just make it happen. And this is part of the never-ending career of being an artist. And I think what you said too, just to recap here, that I really liked and I thought was great advice, was the idea of the people who they're not investing in themselves and they're putting all their logs on one fire, and this continuing to be curious, continuing to reach out to people, and having this, I want to say like a light step about everything, because it seems like you're not getting I'm sure there are serious points where you're working and there's serious projects and there's hard deadlines, but it feels like you've got a smile on your face 95% of the time, and you're just loving it. And so if you can keep that in mind with your art, like if you're hating your art, which I feel like a lot of people do get really frustrated because they feel like they have to do something or they have to learn something. It's like, you don't. You can chart your own course and you can learn that difficult thing later. It might just be that you're not at the right stage. But when you keep that idea that this should be fun and you're being creative and you're getting paid to basically play.
Yes.
And when you start to lose your way and it starts to feel hard and not fun, for me, that was always my sign that I need to change my job, because there is a fun job, there is a fun project out there, and you finish up and you do your work well, and you complete it, and you do it with a smile on your face, and then you go on to the next thing and you look for something that's more fun and more your speed. So any last words? I don't want this to get too long because my editor, he's going to kill us. But
You're fine.
It's good. We had tons of great info in this, and I'd like to have you back to explore more, because I feel like this whole idea of freelance and not knowing where the opportunities are, there's a lot that we need to do to sort of get the word out about this, because there's not enough good information, I feel, or it's not as readily available as it should be. And so there's a lot of people trying to go down, feeling like there's only one path they can go down, when in reality you can just invent your own path.
Yeah, like I said before, you definitely need to invest in yourself. I say, you sell yourself through a career, or you get paid by a studio. You're selling yourself and your time and your talent for a number. Why don't you take 10, 20, 15, whatever minutes a day, sit down and invest in learning something for yourself, and let me tell you, it has paid off abundantly, above, far and beyond what I could understand, as far as time with my children, time with my wife, and of course monetary compensation, and also experience. I mean, for crying out loud, for somebody that didn't draw a lot in high school and then turned his life around, and in the middle of his career, had a dream to do toys and stuff for Disney, and then suddenly I did, because I took the time out to sow into myself or my art career, and that's important. So that's all.
All right. Just before we wrap up here, we will have show notes for this, as well as links to Mike's website, and we'll get all your social media. And that'll be at pencilkings.com/podcast, where you can get links to everything else that Mike has done. So thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate it. And I'm definitely going to have you back if you can spare some more time.
Yes.
Because I feel like there's in need of a follow-up to some of this stuff, especially with the marketing and the freelance. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that need a lot of help with this stuff. So you sound like one of the go-to guys. There's so many different ways to approach this, but the more that we know, the better off we're all going to be for it. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.